Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin from CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, art history. So I just wanted to thank all of you for watching my videos and sending me all those wonderful comments and messages. This is a really interesting, even difficult time for all of us, really. And so getting together, enjoying our own interests, supporting each other is really important. So before we get started, I wanted to sort of reiterate a few things from last week. And so right now, I'm based in Chicago. And right now in Chicago, we're sort of under quarantine for a couple of weeks. And that's actually by and large the case for most people in the US. And so if at all possible, if you don't need to go outside, please don't. This way we can minimize the amount of time we're stuck indoors and doing all of the things we need to be doing, which are difficult. Basically, if we stay indoors and do not come in contact with people, keep your social distancing, as all of the doctors and experts suggest, we could probably be out of this sooner rather than later. So let's continue doing that. In this time, besides it being difficult, a lot of people have a lot of challenges with just not having things to do. And, some people are not working. They're just kind of hanging out at home. They're watching videos I welcome all of you who are joining me for the first time. And, I think this is a really good opportunity to reflect, to learn something new, learn a new language, learn a new skill, or dive deeper into your interests that you've had already. And so that's what I've been doing. And the other thing that I've been doing is reflecting on not just on what I love, which is Japanese art, but about my own collection, my collecting interests, or even my own professional website and my business as an art dealer. Kind of reflecting on what I want to do in the near future, some goals. And I think this is a good time as a collector. I'm going to put on my collecting hat on for a moment. And to reflect on what you've accumulated, what makes sense as you've been collecting for years, as I have. And then, this is a time to think about what you might want to sell, what you might want to add, what directions you want to take. And if for nothing else, this is a good time to enjoy the prints that you've accumulated. A lot of collectors that I know buy art, and then they put it away, and every so often they look at it. This is the time that you should come out, bring out your prints, your most treasured prints, and examine them, look at them, study them. This is a wonderful time to do that. And so basically, I had plans to do a website update for my business, and I just thought this is not the right time for commerce. I don't know what other dealers are doing, and I respect whatever they're doing, which may be different from me. But for me, I think this is a time of reflection and also taking stock of where one is at. And, again, speaking from a collector's perspective, I've taken this opportunity to just really enjoy the prints that I have and, sort of delve deeper into them. And so today, instead of showing a print or prints that will end up on my website for sale, I decided to show you one of my favorite prints that is actually in my own personal collection. And this is not a print that's for sale, but I thought this would be a great time to share something that I love with all of you. So without further ado, let's go to the table and have a look. So I'm going to walk around my table here. Well, the print that I'd like to share with you today is a woodblock print. It's actually mixed media. So it's a woodblock print, an etching, and a newspaper transfer by Jun'ichiro Sekino. And Sekino was a woodblock print artist. He's mostly known as a woodblock print artist, but he was also an etcher and an oil painter. So he was really versatile in his ability to express himself artistically. And he got his start early on as a artist. Actually, I think he was in high school when he started making woodblock prints, and he created a magazine, an art magazine, and he was able to actually get quite a few artists involved, including Shiko Munakata. And Munakata used to live in the area where Sekino grew up, and so he got him and a few other notable artists to contribute to his high school publication. So Sekino, in some ways was a prodigy. And I won't go into his entire life. He's an artist that I've written about. I have a catalog on my website for sale. I basically penned the featuring essay in the catalog, as well as contributing to the catalog as an editor and other things. And so I'll show you the book. But the point is, he had a really long career. Really early on in his life, he expressed interest in making prints, but really his printmaking career didn't really take off until he arrived in Tokyo. It was around 1939, and he soon became an apprentice, you can call it that, of Onchi, or Koshiro Onchi. And Onchi was, I mention him a lot because he's arguably the most important 20th century printmaker and instrumental in the Sosaku Hanga school of printmaking. And so Onchi taught Sekino, if anything, I think he taught him flexibility, and also his sort of inspired Sekino to experiment and to try new things. Sekino was really good at precise designs. I mean, his etchings are great. They're very precise. They're charming. But I think by and large, his work needed a little bit more of like a creative touch, just a tad, I think. And I think Onchi imbued that in him. And so he encouraged him to experiment. And, Onchi was known to experiment in woodblock printmaking. He used found objects. He actually used paper blocks, cement blocks, all kinds of things in making his prints. And this print, as I mentioned, this is a print that is not for sale. It's a print from my own collection, and this is as I mentioned earlier in the video, this is such a good time to reflect on what one is doing with their collecting, and to really enjoy your prints or any artwork you may have. I mean, this is a time to sort of, you have a few more moments than usual. Sit down and really examine your artwork. And so in this particular case, there's a lot to examine. And, I'll talk about the print, and then I'm going to show you some elements about the print that I find even more interesting. First of all, the part of the design is a woodblock print, but I'm going to zoom in first to show you elements that are not. So this print in the background, this design in the background, is actually an etching, and he used his design, an etching of a design for a book of Ex Libris that he designed in 1948. He created these prints in 1948. This print was done about 1950. So he repurposed this design, and he included it in the background here. It's in the background here. It's in the background here. But here he made it the opposite. So what is white here and black here is black here and white here. So it's really interesting. And then we have it again, and he added like string over it. So to prevent the ink from going into this part of it where there's string here. And that's a very Onchi-esque quality, adding string. So I want to show you the actual ex libris. This is the book that I mentioned. It's a book of etchings, all ex libris. What's the plural of ex libris? Is it ex libri? So anyway, this is the design. You know, it's a really rococo sort of burlesque. It actually, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Beardsley. He's a Western artist that kind of specializes in this sort of exuberant, sort of intricate design with women, with these cherubs. And so it's a very interesting print here. I'm going to zoom in so you could see. The detail here is really wonderful. You know, at first blush, it doesn't even look like something that was made by a Japanese artist. The figures are Western. It's very Baroque, Rococo. But then at the bottom, you see in Japanese, there's Japanese script, there's his early signature. You know, and just to kind of give you a flavor, this is the cover page. And here's a design, a landscape. He revisited this design quite a few times throughout his career. More landscapes, portraits. There's a larger version of this portrait that he reworked, and so on. So it's what you would expect from Sekino, but this one particular design, you know, it's surprising. It's very, very different. And so going back to this print, that plate, that metal plate, was used to print this portion of the design, and then back here again, then over here, and I said it's a reverse negative, where the black is white and the white is black, and here again. So I think he started with the etchings that are been impressed into the paper, printed, and then he added other elements. So this mosquito net sort of pattern in the background is a woodblock printed pattern. The butterfly here that's sort of poking in and out of the mosquito net is also woodblock printed. The table here is woodblock printed, as well as here. And then the elements, the black elements are overprinted here, are also woodblock print. And so you could see the string that he added over these elements. That was printed with real string, with a woodblock and pigment, and so he put the string over the piece of paper, and then impressed it so that the ink would print around it and not on directly over the surface. He was able to achieve that even in his etching, which is extremely difficult. So this print is, in some ways, showing off Sekino's abilities in many mediums. I mean, we got etching, we got woodblock printmaking, and now this is something really interesting. This bust is actually made of a newspaper transfer process. So it is printed in the sense, but he took newspapers, Japanese and English language newspapers, and he cut them out. And he cut them out in ways where he could create the design of the bust. So right here, the darker portion of the ear is a part of a newspaper that's dark. These lines were created by a darker part of the newspaper. The nose, the mouth, the eyebrows, the shading of this entire face was created with the different types of shading you get from a newspaper, but they're all cut up. Some of them are torn, some of them are cut very precisely, and it's interesting what he decided to do. That here you even see pictures from the newspaper. There is writing in it looks like English, and here, right by the lips of the sculpture, you see United States, which is interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, it's obviously written in reverse because it's a reverse transfer. What he used is a chemical that he applied to the newspaper and pressed it onto the paper and removed the newspaper, and the ink from the newspaper was migrated onto the print. See here, you see almost like a propeller of some kind of a plane. It's fascinating. And then there's parts of a crossword puzzle here. So this design, though it's not woodblock printed, it is printed, and quite an amount of time was required to cut out the newspaper, transfer the ink from the newspaper onto the paper. And this was done step by step by step. This was not something that was done all at once. And what you see here, this also the coloration in the bust is it's a combination of the newspaper and also the type of chemical he used to transfer the newspaper onto this print. So he planned on that. And you could see that it creates a shading in the face and in parts of the bust that work really well. It's quite realistic. And here we have his early signature, Sekino, in kind of a stamp. Onchi used that type of style of a signature, and so did Azechi, his early work. So he would always sign his early work Z Sekino, and this is how you can tell that it's early. But you know, this work just surpasses anything you might imagine woodblock prints could do. And this work really reflects Sekino's ability to produce work in a versatile way. And I mean, this reflects all of Sekino's abilities in one particular design. And the design is really compelling. It's very thought-provoking. And so, you know, this is one of the reasons why this print is one of my favorite prints. It's certainly one of my favorite prints by Sekino, and it's in my private collection. And so it's a pleasure to pull it out, particularly in this time, to share it with all of you. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment and zoom in so you could see elements of this print, and there's so much to see. I want to show you the verso. You could see the chemicals from the transfer come through. Not a lot of the pigment shows through, partly because this paper that he used is very thick and it's not very absorbent. It's the kind of paper you would see on early Sekino printings, where the pigment really actually does not penetrate the paper so thickly. So you could kind of see the butterfly in there, but not much more. Oh, you do see the plate line for the etchings that are used to print. So that's kind of interesting. You see the plate line here. So the plate lines are there for the etchings, but for these early Sosaku Hanga designs, you know, self-printed works by Sekino or by Azechi or by Saito, by Onchi, the paper that they used early on was actually not very good paper, in the sense that the highest quality of paper of Japan that's handmade is very strong and very absorbent. And those pigments, you know, pull through into the fiber. You could see the pigment or even the design on the verso. You don't see that on these early works because this paper is very, very thick. It's almost like Western paper, but not printmaking paper. And so the pigment, all of it, lies directly onto the surface. And although the paper technically sucks for printmaking, it actually helped make this print as vibrant and dynamic as what we see. Because you see this pigment here, it's this wet printing technique that I think Onchi sort of influenced Sekino and showed him how to do that. That pigment looks like it's right on a surface. This looks like a painting when you look at it in person. But it's not. It's all printed. Now I want to show you. This is the book that I contributed to. It's an exhibition catalog produced by a gallery that I used to work for, and we had an exhibition of prints by Sekino, and this is the featured essay in the catalog. And at the time when this catalog produced, I had not found that print. Otherwise, it would have been in this exhibition. But we did have access to the family's photography, and this is an old photo of Sekino. This is basically from 1951, and we have a young Sekino standing next to the print, and we see it right there. And I think that's really neat to be able to connect the print to the artist in an exhibition hall. He must have been very, very proud of the print, posing next to his print. That's kind of actually very atypical for Japanese people at the time. They didn't really do that. And so, it really showed how proud Sekino must have been to have produced this work. And I mean, he had every reason to be. It is such a beautiful, interesting, compelling work that unfolds in so many different ways when you look at it. I've owned this print for about 8 years, and I never get tired of looking at it. There's always something new that I discover. My attention's always pulled in one way or another here. There's just so much. And that's actually something I always tell my clients. You should never purchase a work of art that reveals all its secrets at first blush. You want to find something that retains something for you. So you could always go back to it and find something new and something that's more compelling. So, before we go, I'm going to zoom in again on the etching so you could see the etching, and then we could look at the print one last time. Now, as I was looking at this print right now, I noticed this butterfly, and I was thinking about my video from last week. So if you haven't seen it, it's a video on Taninaka Yasunori's masterpiece, Man Exhaling Butterflies. And have a look. The video is archived on my website. The video is archived on my website, collectingjapaneseprints.com. It's also on Facebook if you want to click on Facebook and flip through it. But you could easily find it on my website. And in Taninaka Yasunori's print, these butterflies are being this man is exhaling these beautiful butterflies that go out into the world. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of an interesting connection to that print in the sense that the butterflies represented maybe Taninaka's work that goes into the world. And, this print being one of my favorite prints in my profession is certainly sharing these works with all of you. It's an honor to be able to share this work and all the prints that I have available for sale with all of you. It's indeed a pleasure and a privilege. So in this time of reflecting, it's really wonderful to sort of think about what we do as people and how it fulfills us. And if it's not something that does, well, this is a time to make adjustments into your life. As much as you would as a collector would make adjustments to his or her own collection. So there you have it, one of my most favorite works in my own personal collection. And I didn't mention this, but needless to say, this is a unique work. Sekino did not produce more than one of this design. He probably produced it for the exhibition where he is, photographed. And he produced this for himself. This is at a time when he was not yet a professional artist, and he was still an amateur in the truest sense of the word. This is post-war Japan. He's just starting to really sell artwork. And he produced this for himself, and I can imagine him coming home after a long day and working at this at night to produce this. And so this is not one where he could have easily produced an edition of 2 or 3, partly because this work of cutting the newspapers and transferring the newspaper print into the print or on the print is just impossible to duplicate in a printmaking process. He could have done it again, but he'd have to cut out the pieces once more. And, that would be almost, it wouldn't make sense. I mean, I think the way that he approached this was a unique work. He used methods of printmaking to create this work, but this work transcends a print that can be reproduced. As a unique work, a standalone work. And in many ways, that reflects Onshi's influence on Sekino, because Onshi produced so many works that are unique or in very low numbers. And when he did produce prints where there are multiples, by and large, most of them appear different from each other. It was just Onshi's temperament to create prints that reflected his own personal experience of making the prints, of us expressing his emotional state when he was making it, or to try to exploit different aspects of the printmaking process on different impressions. And here we have Sekino, truly inspired by Onshi in that way, producing a unique work. And I can't even imagine the amount of time that was required to produce this, but I'm sure glad he did. Well, I want to thank you, all of you, for joining me today on Woodblock Wednesday. It was a pleasure today to discuss a print in my own collection. I think this is a good time to sort of, as I mentioned, reflect on our lives, particularly even our collecting interests, and and enjoy our prints and learn more about them. So if anyone has any questions about Japanese prints, feel free to direct message me or leave any of your messages below in the comments. And I look forward to seeing all of you next week, where I'm sure I'll find something to discuss that is for sale. So thank you again for joining me. I'll see you very, very soon.